Guns can be a polarizing issue, and for good reason. What they represent is power, specifically the power to do violence. Mao Zedong famously said that all political power comes from the barrel of a gun. Then that makes things complicated. Okay, so this power exists, guns are a thing, so who should have that power? If you lean left, you might say only the registered authorities, only the police and the military and those representatives of the state who have proper training, background, and clearance. Okay, another solution to that problem would be to say you want to democratize power as widely as possible to prevent corruption, because if you concentrate power, it tends to corrupt badly. And unfortunately, the only thing that can counter power is more power, or itself. Since you can't rely on virtue always, which is a power regulating itself, sometimes you need another power, which is why in the US we have multiple branches of government designed to check each other in their pursuit of power. You have multiple sovereigns, basically, all vying for supremacy. You've got vertical separation with states exercising power against the federal government exercising power against the state government. So you've got a vertical dimension, and you've got a horizontal dimension among the legislative, judicial, and executive branches. Then you have another branch, possibly, and that is the people themselves. Okay, so if you lean right and the left wants to regulate guns and put them only in the hands of the state, only in the hands of the duly represented authorities, then the right says, you want to take my guns, what are you planning? You don't trust me? And if you're on the left, you look at the right collecting guns and you say, you want to collect guns? What's the matter with you? What are you planning? And so basically the left is saying, what are you planning with all those guns? And the right is saying, what are you planning by taking away all those guns? And that represents the other key thing about guns, and that is that they represent trust. That's a very interesting thing. Shooting with my brother-in-law, or shooting with anybody, you have to put your faith in that other person, that they will be moral enough to not want to shoot you and competent enough to avoid it by accident, even by accident. And you want to have discipline, and you want to be controlled, and you need to trust that those people that you're shooting with will have that discipline and control. And it's a little bit scary. I had a near miss once where a close friend of mine accidentally discharged a shotgun not that far away from my face, which was scary. Fortunately, that's only one time, and I've been shooting many, many times. So that's an interesting thing. Yeah, trust. Trust is a major component of that. I want to highlight something about that trust, though. In the United States, this does not apply to every country in the world. U.S. gun ownership is a completely unique thing in the world. We have more guns, and this is an estimate, of course, because we don't have strict numbers on this, but we have more guns than people, and nearly 1 trillion rounds of ammunition in civilian hands. And that is amazing. It's absolutely amazing when you divide that number by the number of gun deaths in the country. You realize that the vast majority of gun owners are very responsible and able to restrain themselves or each other. And that is a beautiful thing. Similar to the way that I find modern traffic a miracle. When you drive, you're taking your life in your own hands, and not only are you taking your life in your own hands, but you are trusting in all the other idiots around you. I had a motorcycle accident a couple of years ago where I broke both legs, and it was just because a guy didn't see me, pulled right in front of me. And that's a kind of thing that can happen at any moment of the day. People are running around in giant meat-crushing metal boxes at insane speeds with the power of miniature explosions pushing them along at 80 and 90 miles an hour and whizzing right by you as you're going down the highway. And the crazy thing is, with all of that, and all of them are individual decision makers. They're all doing their own thing. And sometimes they're not even paying attention. And we know about texting and driving and all these things that people can do that are irresponsible, or drinking and driving. And yet it functions most of the time. Millions of individual agents making choices that are dangerous, that involve power, and they're doing it well. And that is beautiful. I mean, if your chances of dying in a car wreck were 1%, you would never drive. that odd is way too high to get behind the wheel of a car, or even in the passenger of a car, and drive down the highway. You wouldn't drive, but we do, because the odds are so unbelievably low of getting hit. I mean, it's a possibility. It lurks around every corner. Is it a thing that can happen? Yes. And the fact that it doesn't is miraculous. Anyway, so that highlights a couple of things about guns. One, they represent the power to commit violence. They represent power. And because they represent power, the other thing, gun policy represents trust or lack of trust. Either you trust the government or you don't. Either you trust the people or you don't. As far as myself, I tend to lean very hard in favor of trusting the people, because I believe in distributing power is probably the best way to manage it. Concentrated power runs into all kinds of problems. In states where only governments are allowed to own weapons, sometimes it goes well if the government is benevolent, but I don't trust that in the long term. As we've seen in China or Germany in the 1930s, there are issues if that power is concentrated in one set of hands. And distributed power seems to work, as evidenced by roads. So yeah, I 3D printed an AR-15. It worked. I'm really pleased with it. It's completely legal where I live, so getting that question aside. And I am grateful to be able to trust. I'm grateful that it works so well so often. That is a good thing.